What's with the bread?
Courtney baked it. 6 loaves last night. She remembered her grandmother's recipe. Also, she ran 12 miles.
12 miles?
Let's begin.
Alright, what's going on, you guys? This is a very important post. Very important. Alright? Now, it says up here, T-minus 12:34. And that was posted around noon, 11:30. And it says T-minus 12:34, which would be midnight. So I'm here, it's 9:30, but it is 12:30 on the East Coast. Now, but what came was posts from Q right at 12. All right, these are very important. So right here, we have the intelligence report on 95 MK Ultra. It's a PDF. We're going to go over that. It says read. Hey, stop barking. Stop ruining my video. That's rude. Excuse me, my dog was just venting. So it says read very carefully. Unreleased, classified, highest level. Ability to use frequencies, incoming signal to modify code and program over X period of time to designate mobile phone to control target subject or conduct original or excuse me. Can you stop? Can you stop with all this stuff? Ability to use free. It's like unbelievable. It's like, can I get some time to just have some quiet? It's 9:30 at night. Unbelievable. Let me start over because this is just really getting on my nerves. So we're going to read the intelligence report. It says read very carefully. It's unreleased, classified, highest level. Ability to use frequencies, incoming signal to modify code and program over X period of time. Designate mobile phone to control target subject or conduct original.
There he is. There's the beast. Oh my gosh. Look at that car that just came out of the woods. Car, dude. That car right there just drove out of the woods. What? Are you serious? Yes.
All right, what that is alluding to is anybody can be a target. Anybody can be a target. They could just turn on the cell phone. Do you wonder why I've been screaming about these towers that are going up? They're a weapon system. They can do all sorts of things. But, and I don't even know if you even need 5G towers for this. I believe that they could be done on the old previous cell phone towers. This technology. But they can beam in through your phone and they could make you do weird things. All right, so that's why it says to designate mobile phone to control target subject or originate outside of U.S. car control. Statement by the driver. I think the driver said that all of a sudden something I don't know. I got to find that out. I got to find out who the driver was. I have not read the statement by the driver. I think I read like an article, but I have to look into that. Because I don't know exactly what the driver said, word for word. But it says, as the world turns, this is bigger than anyone can imagine. Q. Now, right here, it says, discoveries must be original and organic. Discoveries must be original organically. This kind of doesn't roll off the tongue. Hive mind. Q. Yeah, the hive mind, everybody working together and everybody looking at the same thing. You will get to the answer once you get to critical mass of enough people looking at it, because you learn as you listen to other people, and you start picking up information. Look, you got to understand that there are bots now that are all over the place saying Q is fake. I looked into some of these that were on my videos and other videos, and you just have one subscriber or two subscribers or whatever, and they leave these comments. But anybody that's been following Q understands that there is something going on here. There is something going on here. Now listen to how the post gets more and more crazy. Listen to what this is said. Discoveries must be original, organic. Hive mind, Q. Have any recent shooters received therapy in the past? Be the autist we know you are. You were chosen for a specific reason. Q. Now this was at 12:26. What 3 scientists were killed who were researching the SAT relay of mobile phone signals to end users? Why was the research deemed classified? Learn. Q. Was the research deemed classified because what was in that research would not, if that was made public, maybe some of our mobile phones would be designated, or some of these signals, they would have to have controls on them or something to that effect, because they can be used for weapons purposes. So maybe they didn't want to have that regulation, and they wanted to classify this research. So maybe some of the stuff that you can do with these signals, which I've always been saying, are you can weaponize, and not just weaponize sending a signal to somebody for them to feel bad or to shut off their heart or to cause them extreme anguish or something like this. They can be used and they can be programmed via phone. I've heard of some things where some type of thing will pop up on their phone once some sort of app they used, and they will jack into the app, or maybe, I don't know, they have a back door to the app, but then all of a sudden they feel funny, they can't remember, and they have video of them doing something crazy or something. This stuff is for real. They can control certain people. I do not think that they can control everybody, and I don't think, I don't know. I don't have all the information on this, but we are going to read that intelligence report. So once again, what 3 scientists were killed who are researching the SAT relay of mobile phone signals to end users? Why was the research deemed classified? Just throwing out a little more info, don't even know if it has relevance. Cell phones were originally analog. The switch over to digital was very gradual. Digital signals allowed for much greater distance to be covered on much less power. Thus, miniaturization of phones because the nature of square digital waves. Much more effective at filtering noise and interference. This inherently means that phones of today are going to be square wave signals and very low power. If that alone were enough, Q would not exist. That would simply shut them. They would simply shut him, them, and or us down. They may act as a trigger, but are not enough by themselves to completely program a human. And Parkland would suggest that you really need someone who is largely predisposed towards moving in the desired direction to begin with. You can't just flip a switch and a born pacifist suddenly becomes Rambo. Talk to me, Johnny. Yes, target subjects are predisposable to certain mental illnesses. Target subjects are scouted over a period of time to study and arrange therapy. Therapy is in bold and in quotes. Therapy takes X to break the mind into a functional programmable device. Science fiction, I was talking about this. It wrapped up. They love to program the mind. They have been working on this forever. And it seems like they get, somebody gets, all of a sudden they get swooped up by the FBI or certain federal agencies or whatever. And if they already are predisposed to it, they do something. There's sort of a breaking down process, sort of like maybe they call them, they start doing signals, they start working on them, and then all of a sudden they mold them. They start molding their mind with these signals, this technology. It's not science fiction. This was a question by one of the Anons. Are all the Anons safe? I'd say no. How can you say for sure? Are all the anons safe? Why is Big Pharma essential? Expand your thinking. Past cures. Think Google. New Pixel phone. Think Apple versus Samsung. Why was BlackBerry destroyed? We can guide you, but you must organically uncover the truth. They are watching. Archive everything offline. So why is Big Pharma essential? Expand your thinking past cures. Wow, this is some big info, right? Why is Big Pharma essential? Expand your thinking past cures. Think Google. New Pixel phone. Think Apple versus Samsung. Why was BlackBerry destroyed? We can guide you, but you must organically uncover the truth. They are watching. Archive everything offline. MK Ultra was a success and went into implementation. It is just no longer called MK Ultra. That was the development program name. Exactly. Why is everything really made in China? Cost savings? Why is POTUS focused on Saudi Arabia, China, and Russia? Why? Why is Russia being used against POTUS? Why Russia? What damage can Russia do to the Dems? What damage can China do to the Dems? Iran, North Korea? Why does Hussein travel before and after POTUS regarding foreign trips? Use logic. Why is POTUS focused on bringing back manufacturing? Jobs, security, control? True control? Who can you trust? The world is not how you view it. Trust the plan. We are winning. Arrest will come. Logic should answer why it must follow other unfolding events. Learn and spread. All right, so I took a long time with this because I saw BP, but I don't think he's looking hard enough into this. Why is everything really made in China? Well, first of all, it's not the United States. They could implement all kinds of things that aren't in the United States. For one, we know that North Korea is being used by the CIA as a breeding ground. Well, what about if these corporations were using their corporate manufacturing and they were doing something with the signals? I always wondered about these slave shops that are over there, the Apple slave shops, and people were jumping off of these buildings and they had to install nets. I heard that they lock these people in. What about if they are using some sort of technology or some sort of low frequencies to have these people just work like slaves? I mean, if you can get more productivity if you simply beam them with a low frequency certain pulse, you know what I'm saying? And you just beamed it all throughout the manufacturing, you could get more productivity. Well, do you not think that would move up into the boardrooms and they'd say yes, especially if it wasn't in the United States and they weren't breaking any laws because, or it was okay with the Chinese government or whatever? So it really makes me start thinking about slave corporations and slaves, the technology they have, and things like this. Because it says, why is everything really made in China? Cost savings? Why is POTUS focused on Saudi Arabia, China, and Russia? Why? Why is Russia being used against POTUS? Well, it seems that Russia was in bed with the Democratic Party. So right now they want to use it as if Trump is the bad guy. But really, all the information that I've been seeing, it seems like the Democrats were literally working hand over fist with the Russians. So the damage that it could do to the Democratic Party would be to shut them down. I mean, if the Democratic Party, if the DMC was working with a foreign government to bring down a certain candidate or to install some sort of fascist dictator or to do this stuff, it would end the Democratic Party. So when it says what damage can it do, it's unbelievable damage. So I don't know if that's why it's being used against POTUS. And then they say why Russia? What damage can China do to Dems? China, they have sold out the New World Order. China is a big part of the New World Order. Listen to these people talking when they talk about China. All the money's coming from there. China is a very crucial part to this, which is crazy. And then on the Russia thing, it's crazy because on one end, Russia was working to get these bankers out of their country. And then on the other hand, maybe they didn't know. They thought that Hillary would be installed and they were hedging their bets. I do not know. But it does seem that Russia was working with the Democrats. Maybe they were just doing it to get the uranium. Maybe there's a whole bunch of stuff, but there is some shady stuff going on. And then it says Iran, North Korea. Why does Hussein travel before and after POTUS regarding foreign trips? Maybe POTUS is doing the cleanup work to reprogram, because after Donald Trump comes in there and speaks some sense into these people and wants to get a deal, they have to be reprogrammed, or they have to be, talking to again. And he always needs to check up to make sure that Donald Trump, everything is still going according to plan. So he's like the cleanup guy. You know what I'm saying? Or not the cleanup guy, but he's the fixer type of thing to make sure that like nothing has changed, or, oh, you're not listening to that guy. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Use logic. Why is POTUS focused on bringing back manufacturing? Jobs, security, control, true control. Who can you trust? The world's not how you view it. Trust the plan. We're winning. A rest will come. Logic should answer why it must follow other unfolding events. Learn and spread. Why is Big Pharma essential? Expand your thinking. Past cures. Think Google, new Pixel phone. Think Apple versus Samsung. Why was the BlackBerry destroyed? We can guide you, but you must organically uncover the truth. They are watching. Archive everything offline. Consumer Protection Agency, or the CPA. Senator Warren. Corruption. Infiltration. Slush fund. Goodbye. Q. So this repeats it. Oh, no. This is it right here. True control. Who can you trust? We are winning. A rest will come. So learn and spread. Build proofs. We've provided many proofs that cannot be disputed as coincidences. This was done for a reason. More will be provided. Direct confirmation will come. It cannot come now. It will be lost. It will be lost because are they going to shut the power off? Do they have the technology to erase this? What about if it came out and then they did a reset of everything in the United States or something to that effect? I do not know. I don't have the answer, but that's a very big line. It will be lost. It will be lost. The message is not ready. You are part of the army. We are depending on you for God and country. Where we go one, we go all. Stay safe this week. So the message is not ready because it hasn't got to critical mass. It needs to spread into all forums of the internet. Not just YouTube, not just 4chan. It needs to be on Facebook. It needs to be on Twitter, Gab. It needs to be everywhere. Everywhere. Snapchat. It needs to start combating the brainwash, because people are in a sort of, when you hear people and they talk about bad about Donald Trump, I'm not saying one thing for or against Donald Trump here, but what I'm saying is they have used that thing, that anger inside somebody, to close them off to receiving new information. So all they can do is tell you about how much they hate Donald Trump. But while they're doing that, it's almost as if one part of their brain has been closed off to receive any incoming new information. All right, let's go ahead and read the intelligence. All right, I'm going to leave the link. It's 170 pages, so I can't go through it all. But here's Project MKUltra, the CIA's program of research and behavioral modification. This was a joint hearing before the Senate Committee on Intelligence and the Subcommittee on Health and Scientific Research of the Committee on Human Resources, United States Senate, 95th Congress, first session, August 3rd, 1977. Project MKUltra. So let's scan these in here. Biden. Joseph R. Biden. Oh, Joe Biden. Wait, is that his name? Joe Biden? Robert Byrd, West Virginia. Howard Baker. Eisenhower, Earl Eisenhower. Orrin Hatch. Nelson Gaylord. Jennings Randolph. Thomas Eagleton. Alan Cranston. William Hathaway. Donald Reed. All right. Stephen Paradise. Marjorie Whitaker. Don Zimmerman. Claiborne Pell. Gaylord Nelson. All right, so these are the people. Okay. So let's get into the contents here. Oh my goodness gracious. Look at what we have. Testing and use of chemical and biological agents by the intelligence community. Drug testing in foreign countries. 42. Admiral Turner. Yes, I think there is. I have not seen this series of documentation evidence of desire to kill, but I think the project turned its character from a defensive to an offensive one as it went along, and there certainly was an intention here to develop drugs that could be of use. Senator Huddleston. The project continued for some time after it was learned that in fact foreign powers did not have such a drug as was at first feared, didn't it? That is my understanding, yes sir. Is there any indication that knowledge gained as a result of these experiments has been useful or is being applied in any way to present operations? I am not sure if there is any body of knowledge. A great deal of what was there was, I gather, was destroyed in 73. I would like to defer to Frank here. Do you know of any? I know of no drugs or anything like that developed under this program that ever reached operational use or are in use today under this program. By the way, they have so many programs, like just like those how you have shell corporations, they have shell programs. So they have, if something is compromised, if it gets any light, they'll automatically change the name. So obviously this went to the Senate, so they could always say no, not under this program, because they changed the name. So apparently any information that was gathered was apparently useless and not worth continuing. Not worth further development on the part of the agency. I am having difficulty hearing your questions. I can hardly hear myself. I think the answer to your question is that we have no evidence of great usefulness on this, and yet I think we should remember. Well, it is accurate to say that this experimentation produced few useful results or had little application to all operations of the agency or anybody as far as we know. That is basically correct. At the same time, I would point out that we had 2 CIA prisoners in China and 1 in the Soviet Union at this time, and we were concerned as to what kinds of things might be done to them. But I am not saying that. Have you detected any sign that any other nation is continuing or has in the past conducted experiments similar to this or with similar objective? I'm not prepared to answer that one off the top of my head, sir, but I will get it to you. The material referred to follows. We maintain no files of up-to-date information on the testing of drugs in foreign countries. Some years ago, we occasionally would review foreign research on antibiotics and pharmaceuticals in connection with public health and civil defense assessments. For a few years, beginning in 49, we assessed foreign research on LSD under Project Artichoke because of concern that such drugs might be employed against agency or other U.S. personnel. Talking about the 2 safe houses on the east and west coast as being the sources for the unwitting trials. Now the importance of this and the magnitude of it, I think is of significance because we have seen from your records that these were used over a period of 8 or 9 years, and the numbers could have been considerable. You are unable to determine, at least in your own research, what the numbers would be and what the drugs were, how many people were involved, but it could have been considerable during this period of time. It would certainly appear to me in examining the documents and the flowcharts of cash slips that were expended in these areas that it was considerable. But that is a judgmental factor on it, and I think it's important to try to find out what the agency is attempting to get to the bottom of. Now the principal agent that was involved, as I understand it, is deceased and has been deceased for 2 years. The overall agent, Mr. Gottlieb, has indicated a fuzzy memory about this whole area. He has testified before the Intelligence Committee, yet he was responsible for the whole program. Then the director had indicated the destruction of various materials and unfamiliarity with the project. Now you've indicated in your testimony today that there are 2 additional agents on page 9 of your testimony. You indicated there are 2 additional agents in which you have uncovered at the bottom of it, and you say the names of CIA officials who approved or monitored various projects. You talk about the 2 additional agents in your testimony. Now I'm just wondering if you intend to interview those agents to find out exactly what is being done. Two-way mirrors were used. Is that your understanding? Yes, sir. They were placed in the bedroom, as I understand. Well, we have the documents. I believe it was in the church record. And rather elaborate decorations were added, as I understand, at least the one in San Francisco in the bedroom, which are French can-can dancers, floral pictures, drapery, including installation of bedroom mirrors, 3 framed Toulouse-Lautrec posters with black silk mats, and a number of other red bedroom curtains and recording equipment, and then a series of documents which were provided to the committee which indicate a wide proliferation of different cash for $100, generally in the $100 range over a period of time of the particular checks. Even the names are blocked out as the person who is receiving it. Cash for undercover agents, operating expenses, drinks, entertainment while administering, and then it dashed out, and then the other documents. That would suggest at least the signature of your principal agent out there that called the operation Midnight and Climax. Called to the operation Midnight and Climax. Which can you tell us that it might suggest to you what techniques were being used by the agency in terms of reaching that sort of broad-based group of Americans that were being evidently enticed for testing in terms of drugs and others? Do you draw on any kind of conclusions about what might have been going on out there in these safe houses? No, sir. There's a light side to it, but there's also an enormously serious side, and that is that at least the techniques which are used or were used in terms of testing and trying to find out exactly the range of drugs used and the numbers of people involved and exactly what the operation was about, as well as the constant reiteration of the use of small sums of cash at a regular interval. It's a variety of different techniques were employed, but there's an awful lot of documentation putting these matters together. All right, let me skip. I got to read this whole thing, but I thank you. I'd like to say to the American people that we have experienced this morning in the committee room is not being duplicated in any other committee room in any part of the world. I doubt that very much. Our agency and our intelligence community has been under much criticism and has been subjected to much abuse. Oh, it's very rich for you to talk about abuse to your agency while you're abusing Americans. It's just unbelievable. I too want to thank Admiral. Get out of here. Thank you. I want to thank you so much, Admiral, for your cooperation with us today. Testimony of Philip Goldman, former employee, Central Intelligence Agency. there were some MK Ultras in operation at the time I was there. And you were employed at the time when MK Ultra was in operation. There was some MK Ultras in operation. So they talk about people like the MK Ultras are people. There were some MK Ultras in operation at the time I was there. I know of nothing in San Francisco. You were a monitor on any testing of drugs on unwitting persons in San Francisco? No. We have a classified document here that was provided by the agency that lists your name as a monitor of the program, and I would appreciate it if you look. I think the misunderstanding arises because I was Project Sapphire. So they're lying to Congress. Well, would you look at that? Mr. Goldman inspected the document. This document, as it states, is correct. However, that document is correct. As far as I could see on the page, the project, but well, could I get it back, please? That would indicate that you were a monitor of the program. I was in charge of dispersing the monies to Morgan Hall. To whom was that? The individual whose name was listed at the top of the document. And you knew that he was running the project in San Francisco? I knew he was the person who was in charge out there. All right. He just said he didn't know anything about the San Francisco thing, and now all of a sudden he's the guy that's running the operation in San Francisco. So this guy's a liar. I knew he's the person who was in charge out there. All right. But I had no knowledge, nor did I seek knowledge of actually what he was doing, because there would be other things involved. I did receive. What were you doing? I was collecting. I had to be sure that all the receipts... Oh, he was just doing receipt things. Yeah. There was no illegal use of funds. Get out of here. CIA has you as a monitor. So they're just going back and forth. Many others talk about the substance of that program with your name on it. Just trying to find out exactly what role you were playing. The only thing I could tell you about this is that I am drawing completely on my memory, is that this individual who was in charge out there conducted these things and reported them back to the agency. I didn't participate in any of them. All I want to know is that he was furnished me with receipts for things that were done. All I did was receipts. I worked for the CIA, and I touch receipts. That's all. It's good. Just unbelievable lying by the intelligence community. I'm perfectly willing to tell you everything that I can remember, but you can't remember anything. I can't remember the substantive parts of these things. I really can't. Of the program that was taking place. Do you have any greater familiarity with what was happening in New York? No. You have the same function with regards to New York? The same function with regard to New York. Did you ever go to San Francisco? Yes. Did you meet with the agent in charge? Yes. Why'd you meet with him? To discuss some receipts. To discuss some of the receipts and things that were out there, to find these things. And yeah, all this guy did is receipts, right? For MK Ultra. Hey, all I did was receipts. You travel out there to find work that's being done, and what does he tell you? The work is being done, and he told me that the work they were doing was progressing satisfactorily. So this guy's lying. I mean, he's just lying. Floral pictures, the rest, recorders, two-way mirrors. Did you say two-way mirrors? Yes, where? In the safe houses? Where? San Francisco. How about New York? Yes. Do you remember now that you approved expenditures for New York? No, sir. Other than that, I know that it had been used. According to the information that I now have, it was used by the Bureau of Narcotics to make meetings with individuals who they were interested in with regard to pushing dope. Not pushing dope, but selling narcotics and that sort of thing. Why did you go to the safe houses? It's a very complicated story. Just in justification of myself, this came up just day before yesterday. I have not really had enough time to get it all straightened out in my head, so I ramble. Well, take your time and tell us in your own words. We've got some time here. My responsibilities which would involve any of the period of time that you were talking about, really was not directly related to drugs at all. I was a psychologist charged with the responsibilities of trying to develop as much information as I could on various cultures, overseas cultures, anthropological data type, and if you follow what I mean. I was also engaged in trying to work out ways and means of assessing people and understanding people. Yeah, I heard that they would send the CIA and they would data collect and they would learn the culture to better infiltrate and use and abuse them. I originally became involved in this through working on Chinese culture. Over a series of time, I was introduced to the problem of brainwashing, which is the thing that really was the most compelling in relationship to this, and became charged with the responsibility of trying to find out a little bit about interrogation techniques. Among other things, I decided that one of the best sources of interrogation techniques would be trying to locate and interview and become involved with experienced police interrogators in the country and experienced people who had real practical knowledge of interrogation. The reason for this is that we had become pretty well convinced after the experience of the brainwashing problems coming out of China that it was the techniques of the interrogators that were causing the individuals to make confessions and so forth in relationship to this, rather than any kind of drugging and so forth. So they were very much interested in interrogation techniques, and this led me being introduced to the agent on the West Coast, and I began to talk to him in connection with these interrogation techniques. Okay, now, is this agent that ran the test on the West Coast on the unwitting people? That's where you come in, correct? If I understand, would you say that again? The name Morgan Hall that is the name that has been used, yes. And that is the agent that you met with? That's right. You met at the safe house? Yes, sir. Whom did you meet with in the safe house? This is the part that is hard for me to say. I am sorry that I have to. In connection with some work that we were doing, we needed to have some information on sexual habits. Morgan Hall provided informants for me to talk in connection with the sex habits that I was interested in trying to find information. During one period of time, the safe house, as far as I was concerned, was used for just these particular type of interviews, and I didn't see the red curtains. Those were prostitutes, were they? Yes, sir. How many different times were you there that you had similar? I couldn't possibly say with any certainty on that. 4 or 5 times. 4 or 5 times. Over, you remember now, the period that I'm talking about when I say I would have any involvement in this is from about 56 to 61. So it's about 4 or 5. So it's about a 4 or 5 year period, which is the only time that I know anything about what you're talking about here today. Did Morgan Hall make the arrangements for the prostitutes to meet with you? Yes, sir. Did the interviews that you had have anything to do with drugs? Well, as I tried to explain earlier, when this was being discussed a little bit beforehand, again, I think it was pretty hard for most people now to recognize how little there was known about the drugs at the period of time that we're talking about, because drug age or the drug culture comes later on. Consequently, those of us who had any responsibility in this area were interested in trying to get as much information as we could on the subculture drug groups, and obviously the Bureau of Narcotics represented a means of doing this. Consequently, other types of things that were involved in discussions at the time would have to do with the underground use of drugs. When I'm talking about this, I'm talking about the folkways in terms of unwitting use of drugs. Did these people that I was talking to have any information about this? And on rare instances, they were able to tell me about their use, and in most cases, this would largely turn out to be Mickey Finn or something of that sort rather than anything esoteric. I also was very much interested because we had relatively little information, believe it or not, at the time in terms of the various reactions that people were having to drugs. Therefore, these people were very informative in terms of what they knew, a great deal of information about reactions. At least you gathered, or I'm correct in assuming that you gathered the impression that the prostitutes that you had talked to were able to slip the drugs to people, as I understand it. Did you form any impression of that? I certainly did not form the impression that they did this as a rule, but they had the knowledge. They had the knowledge, or some of them had knowledge of this being done. But again, as it turned out, it was largely in this area of knockout drops. Looking back now, did you form any impression about how the agency was actually testing the broad spectrum of social classes in these safe houses, with the large dispersal of cash in small quantities, $100 bills, and the kinds of elaborate decorations and two-way mirrors in the bedrooms, and all the rest of it? Is there any question in your own mind what was going on in the safe houses, or the techniques that were being used to administer the drugs? I find it very difficult to answer that question, sir. I had absolutely no direct knowledge that there was a large number of this. I had no knowledge that anyone other than Morgan Hall was in any way involved in the unwitting administration of the drugs. But Gottlieb would know. Would he not? I believe so, yes, sir. Could we go into the Human Ecology Foundation and talk about that? And how is it used as an instrument in terms of the support of research? Yes, sir. Could you describe it to us? Could you describe the Human Ecology Foundation? How it functioned and how it worked? May I tell you something about how it evolved, which I think is important? Sure. The Society for the Investigation of Human Ecology, so-called, was actually I'm confused here now as to whether I should name you names. Well, we're not interested in names or institutions, so we prefer that you do not. So the senator is saying don't. That has to be worked out in arrangements between Admiral Turner and the individuals and the institutions. But what we're interested in the foundations really was how it functioned and what the purpose was. Well, it was established to undertake research in the general area of the behavioral sciences. It definitely had almost no focus or interest in, say, drug-related type of activities, except in a very minor way, because it was largely set up to attempt to gain a certain amount of information to fund projects which were psychological, sociological, anthropological in character. It was established in the sense of a period, but the defensive orientation soon became secondary. Chemical and biological agents were to be studied in order to perfect techniques for the extraction of information from individuals, whether willing or not, in order to develop means for the control of the activities and mental capacities of individuals, whether willing or not. One agency official noted that drugs would be useful in order to gain control of bodies, whether they were willing or not. In the process of removing personnel from Europe in the event of a Soviet attack and other programs, the CIA began to develop and produce, stockpile, and maintain in operational readiness materials which could be used to harass, disable, or kill specific targets. Reports of research and development in the Soviet Union, the People's Republic of China, and the Communist bloc countries provided the basics for transmutation of American programs from a defensive to an offensive orientation. As the chief of the medical staff of the Central Intelligence Agency wrote in 1952, there is ample evidence in the reports of innumerable interrogations that the communists were utilizing drugs, physical duress, electroshock, and possibly hypnosis against their enemies. With such evidence, it is difficult not to keep from becoming rabid about our apparent laxity. We are forced by this mounting evidence to assume a more aggressive role in the development of these techniques, but must be cautious to maintain strict and volatile control because of the havoc that could be wrought by such techniques in unscrupulous hands. In order to meet the perceived threat to national security, substantial programs for the testing and use of chemical and biological agents, including projects involving the surreptitious administration of LSD to unwitting volunteer subjects at all social levels, high and low, Native American and foreign, were conceived and implemented. These programs resulted in substantial violations of the rights of individuals within the United States. Although the CIA recognized these effects of LSD to unwitting individuals within the U.S., the project continued. As Deputy Director for Plans, Richard Helms wrote the Deputy Director of Central Intelligence during discussions which led to the cessation of unwitting testing. While I shall share your uneasiness and distaste for any program which tends to intrude upon an individual's private and legal prerogatives, I believe it is necessary that the agency maintain a central role in this activity, keep current on enemy capabilities, the manipulation of human behavior, and maintain an offensive capability. There were no attempts to secure approval for the most controversial aspects of these programs from the executive branch or Congress. The nature and extent of the programs were closely held secrets. Even DCI McCone was not briefed on all the details of the program involving the surreptitious administration of LSD until 1963. It was deemed imperative that these programs be concealed from the American people. As the CIA's Inspector General wrote in 1957, precautions must be taken not only to protect operations from exposure to enemy forces, but also to conceal these activities from the American public in general. The knowledge that the agency is engaging in unethical and illicit activities would have serious repercussions in political and diplomatic circles and would be detrimental to the accomplishment of its mission. And then it gets into the death of Frank Olson, who they killed. Here's one that says covert testing on human subjects by military intelligence groups, material testing program EA 1729, Project Third Chance, and Project Derby Hat. Army drug testing program for LSD. Counterintelligence, blah, blah, blah. Hold on, it goes. What's crazy is, man, these are straight out of these movies where they have these secret medical facilities. They're holding people against their will. They kill people. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And then they try to chalk it up to like, well, we had to. We had to do it, sir. LSD was administered surreptitiously at a stimulated social reception to volunteer subjects who were unaware the purpose or nature of the test in which they were participating in. LSD was administered to volunteers who were subsequently polygraphed, and then it was also isolation chambers. But those were for willing participants. There's also unwilling participants. I mean, like I said, they locked these people up. They did all kinds of very, very crazy stuff. Very crazy stuff. I'll leave this link because it's long. The Trip Report. They actually have a thing called the Trip Report for Project Third Chance. The subject was a U.S. soldier who had confessed the theft of classified documents. Well, why don't we use this on Hillary Clinton? Conventional methods had failed to ascertain whether espionage intent was involved. a significant new admission by subject that he had told a fellow soldier of the theft while he still had the documents in his possession was obtained during the EA 1729 interrogation along with other variations of subject's previous account. The interrogation results were deemed by the local operational authority satisfactory evidence of subject's claim of innocence in regard to espionage intent. So this document has just completely given me a new look on just all this stuff that's going on. Even though I heard of it, just to hear these people talk and all this stuff, the way that they're being very deliberate in the way that they are hiding the stuff when they had to go and testify in the the Senate Intelligence Committee. They're being they start lying and say, "Oh, I can't remember this," and then later on, while they're talking to him, they talk completely about it. So they forget, and then they remember, and then the senators have to jog their memory. They're like, "Oh, what about this guy? What about this guy? Oh, what about that? Didn't you say you were doing?" So they're going up there and they're just basically not saying the full thing that they're doing unless they're caught, and then they're like, "Oh well," but they still dodge all the questions. But some of the stuff they did at these hospitals, man, oh man. I mean, they're talking about kidnapping people and putting them in these secret hospitals and doing all kinds of things to them, and people were dying, and they were removing their bodies, and they're just going along. This is like out of a horror movie. Crazy. So right here it says, not divulge or make available any information related to U.S. Army Intelligence Center interest or participation in the Department of the Army Medical Research Volunteer Program to any individual, nation, organization, business, association, other group, or entity not officially authorized to receive such information. Something tells me that's not happening with these big tech companies and things like this. Nowadays they have way more. They have merged the government and these corporations. Yeah, it just goes on and on.
This sounds completely and utterly satanic to me.